All right, we are rolling.
Oh, okay.
So,
Great.
what's your name?
My name's Richard.
Richard. I'm Jeff. Yeah. So you've heard the question, but I'll ask it again for the camera's sake.
Sure.
But we could just talk to each other. So, what do you think happens after we die? You've had about a minute to think about it. Actually, a lifetime to think about it.
I'm not terribly religious. I'm like more of an atheist, materialist type of person. So when I think about what happens when you die, I think it's like a physical reaction, right? Like your brain turns off, the chemistry and physics that makes whatever consciousness and the soul, if you will, alive, just sort of stops. You end up being buried in the ground. You get consumed by other, creatures like insects and bacteria and all that other stuff, and you decay.
You become worm food.
One with the earth yet again, and it cycles back in some way. That becoming worm food makes me become, cow food, which makes me become a slab of beef that then gets eaten by another human being, and it starts all over again.
Continue to have a positive impact even after you die.
Exactly.
With the minerals from your body.
Or it's not even like a positive impact, but it's just this inescapable fact that we're all, well, not fact, but my inescapable belief that it's all just one system. There's no getting in or out of it. Aside from, those transcendental moments where we find something that is divine in the physical world, those moments where someone really affects your life and you see that flash of sublime or divine stuff. That's
Have you
something
ever
that
experienced
inspires
anything
people
like that,
to
or?
transcend. I don't know, since I was 13 or so, when I decided, I had a very transactional view of religion of well, if I'm a good boy, then God needs to pay me back.
Okay.
And then when that, didn't work out, my life was really hard despite my best attempts at being a good boy. My faith in God was shaken, and I became someone who was turned off by, or really very skeptical of the divine or the transcendental.
You became a skeptic, yeah.
So then, I have moments of this right here, serendipity, of just bumping into a guy in the park who said, "Let me ask you one of the deepest questions in the world." And I got very excited about the opportunity. That to me has a smack of fate or something good, some positive, godly type of force.
Yeah.
But I don't have any faith in that stuff. I think it's kind of random. It happens. Feels great when it happens.
Yeah.
I also think that if you yourself turn your mind off from transcendental experiences or from divine experiences, you won't see them, even
You'll
though
miss out.
they're still maybe there if you decide to put that extra if that's the interpretive lens you view the world from, you're going to see more divine stuff.
Yeah.
If I think everything is just, matter bumping into each other and we all end up worm food, then I'm going to see a lot more
casual relationships, as far as naturalistic relationships.
Exactly.
Or
trying to rationalize everything instead of admitting that there is some mystery, there is some room for us to have different kinds of
let me ask you a
faith.
couple questions about that. So, how did you get to the idea that religion is transactional, as far as before you decided it wasn't?
I think it
How
was.
did you get to that?
I was raised Lutheran, but my mother was Catholic, and I think in the Catholic teaching of the understanding of if I'm a sinner, I'm a born sinner, I maybe make a confession and try to do good deeds, and then that buys me, salvation in heaven. At least that's how I was, raised to understand it. Again, Catholic doctrine might not exactly be that, but that's how I understood it.
Right.
So to me, I thought of it as a transactional thing, where if I'm a good boy and I'm a holy person and I pray to God every day, then when I pray for God for, my parents to not get divorced or whatever, then it should pay off that way. And when it doesn't pay off that way, I'm like, well, what's the point in the faith? And, my pastor or whatever would say, you have to, you can't think of it in that transactional way. You have to think of it as God has a plan for you, and it's a mysterious plan, and you may not know, what, the positive parts of the seemingly negative experience are.
So it almost sounds like, despite what at least the pastor was teaching, you were believing in an if-then relationship. If I do this, then...
And it's it's a very childish way of looking at the world. So then, when it didn't work out that way, I had to sort of adapt my religious beliefs. And my older brother was a big influence on me, and he was more of a Buddhist, atheistic mindset. I don't know how he got there precisely, but it was very much, I think, a similar thing of just feeling disenchanted with faith, of feeling like there wasn't enough material prosperity and there wasn't enough happiness in our lives for us to keep the faith alive. Whereas I feel like if you have a strong nuclear family, or if you have like, you know, a church community that's really alive and vibrant, then that stuff gives you reason to keep the faith alive and to see those mystical moments of divine intervention.
Now, Richard, would you say you also don't believe in God or a higher power of any sort?
I think that we're not in any way like the highest power or the highest authority in the universe, but I don't know that there's, you know, I don't think there's a God, no.
Yeah. Well, if not us, then what would it be? See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Like, I can't think of anyone smarter than us.
You know,
but at the same time, we're like,
we have no idea.
We're going to kill ourselves off.
Yeah,
if
we have.
continue on
There's
this
that,
path.
right? So, like, humans are like vain and ignorant and greedy, and all the we have all the flaws that, you know, the Christian sort of teachings might say that a sinner has.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that like I don't know. I think that
like, have you grappled with questions about like where did creation come from? You know, like where did existence? Creation implies a creator.
That's the thing that I think is so hard. Is it's like I don't think we have enough. Like, even if I would try to be like, I'm an atheist and a materialist and I believe in science, I don't even think science has a satisfactory answer for that.
Yeah.
So I could go, you know, it's the Christian God that made the world. I could go, it's the aliens that designed the world.
Yeah.
I honestly don't think that there's necessarily.
So you're more like an agnostic, it sounds like.
Yeah, I am a little bit of an agnostic, except for that I also think, though, that like religion currently is like a social force in a human society. It's like kind of a net negative, or I mean, like, I don't want to get rid of religion. I think in fact, the fact that religion has disappeared in American society has like hurt us. And it's like as far as like we understand communities and stuff.
Yeah.
But I also think that, like, you know, it's.
It can definitely have negative influences.
It can have negative influences, and it can assure you that you are right, or assure you that to maybe not ask questions and not embrace the mystery sometimes, and that's what I think is most frightening, is whenever someone's certain, whether it's an atheist or a believer, is when we end up in difficult territories.
Yeah. I think there's enough disagreement within Christianity, for example, to say we can't be too certain. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's a lot of different, you know, even within the Christian faith, there's a lot of differences. But how would you say you determine truth? You know, like, what would be your standard for truth?
I think,
sounds like it's not science.
Yeah,
necessarily.
It's not science. It's not religion. I think truth is a label that we develop socially and via consensus, right? So there is no objective material truth.
Yeah.
The way that truth is a label that humans invented, and that we put on statements that we can find agreement in, like the sky is blue.
Yeah.
You and I can both agree that statement is true, so then we call it true in this group. But if, you know, there's a 3-year-old who thinks that color is green or whatever, then suddenly that statement doesn't lack truth for them, even though it's still true within our community of, you know, more rationally minded.
Like, how would you, like, let's say someone grew up in a culture that does teach that, for example, gang rape is okay. It's a passage of, you know, a rite of passage.
I mean, I think that's the thing that's so ugly about this,
like,
is that, like, it is.
I mean, I had to go there, you know.
I know.
Some really horrendous
I understand what you mean, but it's like, I think that is really. It's not like that there's a moral truth that culture was wrong. That is a cultural consensus that we would view as wrong, but that
for them, it's their consensus.
It makes sense, and that's their truth. And I think that's the thing that's awful about it, is that I think since we've, you know, like, since the Enlightenment and people really started undermining this, like, belief in certainty, either scientific or religious, it makes it so that, we have sort of lost the capacity for an idea of truth beyond that sort of consensus I described, which is really scary for the human condition and human society, which is why we need communal institutions that keep people, like, connected and reassured and not despondent about, you know, the material world. Yeah.
What would it take for you to believe God does exist? What, you know?
I don't know. I think again, it's one of those things where I would have to be something that changed my understanding of, like, consensus reality. I would have to have, like, a near-death experience and think I saw him. I would maybe have to spend, and I think the other thing is I could be persuaded into, like, certain, you know, like, versions of of God. Like I could more easily imagine like a deist conception of God, of the God that created the world and then just set us on a on like a clock. Exactly,
Yeah,
is what
like the
is
watchmaker.
metaphor. Exactly. So I could buy into that more quickly than I could buy into like a more like fundamentalist Christian view, or like my friend is a reformed Jew. He's a reformed Jew who kind of believes in a more like God is the word we humans use to describe this like propulsive natural force of growth and change, and
So more of an
through
impersonal.
time, an impersonal, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So I think for me to establish a personal relationship with God,
Yeah.
it would have to be something that totally like blew my mind. Like I saw like a miracle or a vision.
Well,
of some sort.
let's say, for discussion's sake, that God does exist.
Sure.
Has certain things that, well, for example, wants to be identified as a he.
Sure.
Says, "I want to be your heavenly Father," right? That would be something that we might not choose. I think God should be more like Mother Nature, like a mother, like. So we might not choose that. Prefers one sort of behavior over another, Wants to be number one in our life,
Sure.
and so is therefore jealous of anything that takes the place of that number one.
Yeah.
And knows that he is not just wants it, deserves it. So like if I was jealous that like I wasn't number one in someone's life, that'd be pretty pathetic, because I'm a pathetic little man, right?
Sure.
But if I was God, and if I knew
Everything,
and I knew how everything functioned, and I knew that it functioned best when it's in a right relationship with myself, then I would be correct in saying I'm jealous when people choose something else.
Sure.
Kind of like I'd be jealous if someone put like sugar in my gas tank. It's not designed to run on that, you know? I would be jealous that it's not gasoline, So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, to be in a relationship with that kind of a God, we would have to be in a relationship, and just tell me, not necessarily that you agree with me, but that you understand what I'm saying.
Sure.
You would have to be in that relationship on God's terms, not necessarily your own.
Well, yeah, he's all powerful, and he has
Yeah.
the correct conception of the way the world is supposed to be.
Right. So if we go into this relationship saying, well, God, I think you should act this way, like you should always be loving, and whenever I pray and ask for something, I should think you should always give it to me, because that's what a loving God would do. And when we find out that God is, maybe has other values, that love is not the only important thing, that maybe, justice or fairness or patience or teaching self-discipline, Do you have children?
No, I know.
I mean, I'm a father. I know that, like oftentimes I've had to like take the chance that my kids are going to hate me for stepping down and
For sure.
and trying to teach them some positive values. Like, no, you can't have ice cream for supper, or So I guess that's what I'm getting at is what would that relationship with an omnipotent being like that look like?
That's what I'm saying, is that I think it's beyond our ken. I don't think that we could possibly imagine what an omnipotent being would want. I mean, I guess then we would have to make certain assumptions, like, well, our omnipotent being might be jealous, like we are prone to be, and that's like why we would.
Well, that would be a good assumption, but also, I'll just tell you this. So I don't know if you call me what did you call it? A fundamentalist?
Fundamentalist,
Christian?
like
I'm a
written word is the literal truth.
Yeah, like I believe the Bible is literally God's word, but I also know there's many genres within it, so that I'm not supposed to read it all literally, because some is symbolic and some of these things are parables, and some, So
you can read it and have the wrong interpretation.
So I think when people say you take the Bible literally, some people do, and they use it for their own like they take it out of context.
Again, like someone who took the Bible literally would not have this conversation with me as a heretic or
probably,
whatever.
Maybe
Stone me in the street.
To me, fundamental, like when you go to the Sox game and they have the fundamentalist corner, like not the fundamentalist, but the fundamentals. It's like they're trying to teach the basics of baseball.
Yeah.
So to me, fundamentalist means let's get back to the basics. And so I'm not Catholic, and I'm I actually grew up Lutheran, but even the Lutheran Church has developed some traditions since it got back to the Bible, and then now they've developed some traditions that kind of get away from the Bible,
Yeah.
And so I would say maybe I am a fundamentalist because I say let's get back to the Bible and bypass all of these years of
Men
tradition,
interpreting it and
man-made
putting their own-
interpretations and tradition. That's not to say traditions are bad. It's just that I would say, well, let's let the Bible tell us whether that tradition is a good one or not, and some are not. So that's just to give you an idea of who you're talking to here.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that God, that it would be impossible to enter into a relationship with God on His terms, or into I guess you'd say it, a right relationship with God.
Sure.
That's what righteousness means, a right relationship with God. I couldn't do it on His terms unless He somehow communicated to me what those terms were.
And that would,
and that's where the Bible comes in. So we don't see, as Christians, we don't see the Bible necessarily as something that we try to figure God out with according to our own rules, but more like, okay, God, who do you reveal yourself to be? It's a revelation. So scientific knowledge is us trying to figure out all the order and patterns in God's creation and use it for our own advantage, which is perfectly fine. I think that's, science is a wonderful thing. I see the order of the universe as a positive for mankind that God has put there. He's given it order. Like you start looking at like the periodic table of the elements. I mean, it's so much order there. It's amazing, right? And the more we study it, the more we can figure out that order, and the more we can invent and do things.
I think yes and no, because I think that was true in the 1700s and the 1800s.
Yeah.
I think the 20th century totally blew the lid off of that. I think science now generates more questions. That's why I have no certainty in
I would definitely say that too.
Since Einstein and relativity and quantum physics, it's like there's no...
We're entering into the most postmodern era, which means, we realize there's exceptions to these scientific laws.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right about that.
So then it becomes, again, there's that element of chance and randomness. And again, in my more materialist view, I think that's the randomness, the things that we can't explain, the things we don't predict, that's the divine. That's the godly bit of the world. I think that if order was supposed to be like something that we revered, the world and everything would be more orderly. I think that the fundamental nature of reality is not order, it's chaos. And then that's again part of the reason why I can't buy into the idea that the thing that is all powerful is something that creates order.
I mean, the Bible would say God created order, and then disorder came when we rebelled against Him. So with the fall, the rebellion.
That's right.
And so you have this whole worldly order breaking down. Now I think, like lifespans, for example, our health is breaking down. However, it's gone up because of the accumulation of knowledge.
The scientific
but
word would be
overall,
entropy, right? Since we've fallen, everything is constantly
getting
slightly
more
worse
disordered.
and decaying and falling apart, and eventually. In the scientific explanation, it's like, well, eventually things will just break down so much that we'll have to Big Bang all over again. Or I don't know what their explanation for it would be. But then the religious explanation would be let's, as the chaos continues, as man gets further and further from the divine order, it's like that's apocalypse and Revelation, which again I can kind of buy into because it looks like we're heading that way.
Does seem like it, So now, do you? It sounds like you are pretty open to different religions. You studied some. Or not?
A little bit. I mean, I got it in middle school of here's what the Buddhists believe, here's Hinduism and reincarnation, here's Christianity and Judaism. And I studied philosophy in college, so it's a lot of reading.
What was your major?
Old texts. I was an English major, English history, double. But I think I probably spent the most time with my philosophy texts and with religious texts. And again, just like that.
So you're definitely interested in that sort of thing?
Yeah.
And doesn't sound like you've arrived at a place where you're open to growing more and learning more, right?
I am open to grow. Again, like I said, like
Yeah.
I could see myself like becoming a more dedicated Buddhist and meditating more. I could see myself having a near-death experience and coming to Christianity. I could see myself wanting a really like vibrant, social, like family-based community and becoming more interested in Judaism or whatever.
Yeah.
Like my life could take any number of religious.
How old are you, may
things.
I ask?
I'm 27.
Okay.
27. So it's
It's a
like,
good place to be.
you know, maybe again, like you said, when I have kids, I might like find more appealing parts of that like idea of patriarchal order, or like the idea of like that there is a purpose.
Yeah, you'll appreciate order when you have kids.
or like just to have faith in something. Like, because if I don't have kids, then I'm like, well, what does the future matter? It's just like me until I'm dead in the ground, again, from my sort of selfish perspective. But if I have kids, then maybe I have to have something to like anchor me and give me the strength to like see them through what I think is, again, that a world that's kind of on a down slope currently, until we, you know, get together as, you know, human beings and start fixing it.
Would you say that you're a good person?
I don't know. I try to be. I think everyone tries to be a good person.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
I'll just say that, you know, and I want to respect your time. Everybody that I've met and talked to at least tries to be a good person. And, you know, like, I asked the question, you know, like, if you died today and you're standing before God and it is a judgment day like the Bible describes, and, you know, heaven and hell are at stake, you know, 99% of the people that I talk to actually over that would say, and I'm assuming maybe you would say the same thing, yeah, I think God would look at my life, even though I didn't believe in him, I think he'd look at my life and say, I was a pretty good guy.
I like to think so.
Yeah.
I'm an elementary school teacher.
Are you?
Like
I'm a high school teacher.
Someone who's very like dedicated to my community and that has spoken up on social justice issues and fought for stuff that I think is important. So I think that stuff is all valuable, and I think it's all me being a good person. But I also think that it maybe from a wider view, if I had, you know, more omniscience like God, I might see what I've like done in my life, the patterns, the ripples I've sent out into the universe are not necessarily as positive as I wish
the
they
butterfly
were.
effect.
But you never know. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this. What the Bible teaches about that is that everybody has a moral conscience, like a moral compass, you know? It's that, you know, that we know we instinctively know, or actually it says it's God-given.
Yeah,
you know, after Adam and Eve, you know, the story of Adam and Eve, they rebelled against God, and it says their eyes were open, they knew good from evil. And so from them on, we all know generally good from evil. We might argue about, you know, but the fact that we always feel the obligation to come up with an excuse for behavior that's, you know, questionable.
We know is wrong.
We feel accountable to someone. And so whatever religion or atheist,
moral system.
Yeah. One thing that has happened in my conversations is I've always found out that atheists are not these diabolical people that just want to do whatever they can.
We're not Satanists or whatever.
That they want to be seen as good people too. Only it's like, I don't need the threat of hell or the reward of heaven. I can just be a good person, good without God.
Yeah.
Right. But the fact is, they still want to be good.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
And so I've come to see the world as a lot of people wanting to somehow justify their existence, justify that they're good, but they don't want to be accountable to a particular God. They want to actually write the rules themselves.
As they go along.
And so a lot of the social justice stuff, even this summer, I feel is the result of a lot of people sitting around with nothing to do, and then all of a sudden feeling like, man, I'm just sitting here, I'm not getting anything done, I better go out and justify my existence. So I'm going to go out and march or whatever. And so, you know, so the question is, are we going to accept God's standards for what is good, or are we going to make them up on our own? It's not, are we going to go our own way and do all the bad things we can do? No, it's are we going to, who's going to be the authority in our life?
And I think ultimately it's like it's going to be a compromise. I mean, I'm also like not a Democrat, but just like a little d Democrat, you know? I mean, like, I fundamentally believe that the way that people and society solve problems or by consensus and compromise. And I think
Yeah.
that when we've got a world filled with all these different kinds of religions, there's so much that they agree on, and then there's little specifics where they differ. So when there's like so much consensus around a good rule, like don't murder someone, then we're gonna stick with it.
Yeah.
And then when there's something that's more up in the air, like is gay marriage a good thing or a bad thing, we're gonna fight back and forth on it. And I think that's like part of the human condition, maybe one of the best parts, is all of us trying to assert ourselves and have our opinions heard and figure out who's right. Although then, I guess you're right, now I'm talking about the domain of man and how we think we know what's best, but maybe we need to sit down and listen to the big guy
like
upstairs.
majority opinion is almost it's putting man in the driver's seat rather than God. And so so the challenge sometimes for me as a Christian is, am I going to believe what I believe the Bible to be saying about right and wrong, despite the fact that most of the world says no, we don't believe that. And it's hard, and it definitely is something that deepens my relationship with God, because it keeps me from being one of those people who can say that I'm right all the time. It's like, and even questions about the past or things that science would just totally debunk or whatever. It makes me dependent on God rather than myself. So it's kind of humbling. It's humbling to be a Christian, I would say. It should, and I think it should be. Not something that makes us think we're rulers over the whole world or anything. So, you gotta get going?
Yeah, I gotta get going.
Okay.
This is a great conversation.
Yeah,
I love what you're doing. I believe in like the project itself. It's
good.
great.
So I'll give you my card, and you can see how other people have responded, and there's a lot of videos on there. So this is my church. You've probably seen it
I've
around
seen
here.
this.
And then that's my YouTube channel.
Sure thing.
And that's my number on the bottom. I'd love to talk more when you have time.
Man. Maybe this is right down the street. Maybe I'll drop by sometime.
Would love it, yeah.
Have a nice day.
I haven't been there since March.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But they are meeting both in person and online. And my wife hasn't been comfortable with going, so I haven't gone yet. But I'm gonna go back. Where do you teach at? I'll turn this off.
Oh yeah. I teach at Evergreen Academy Middle School. It's like right on 36th and